I am very happy to see a message like this coming from Mr. Aspile14 because it makes me realize how important it is first to explain to all players how exactly are we testing before we carry on and do more tests, or basically, in other words, how the game works. As whenever we want to test a certain setup, and let's take an example here, Cyrus, Vlad and Mansa Musa, we want to generate a number which describes the overall match performance. And one of these numbers is indeed the total damage, but there is another factor which can be used. I'm going to reveal this in this episode, and I don't blame the players for being confused because this is yet another reason for the developers to rework this entire tab to be more transparent and also to see the rest of the stats. But guess what? Till then you have me. So why it's confusing? You see here total damage, but then you see highlighted here total healing. Then you see here highlighted control effects. But in reality, all the control effects, if you have any, or the total healing are massively influencing the battle outcome, or in other words, the match performance. So Mr. Aspine14 wrote the following message. I think you need to specify that it's more about DPS, by the way, this is damage per second, but not survivability and tankiness, which matters a lot too. Now also in this episode, I'm gonna show you this factor, damage per second, and how easily it is to misunderstand the entire match performance based on the damage per second. But in other words, Mr. Aspine14 says that it's impossible to get a number which comes as close as possible to describe a match performance, as that allows us easily to show with percentage by how much a match is better than the other one. And we are back on my main account, beautiful people, as I have prepared something for you to explain you in the best way possible. But first, as always, people, don't forget to support what supports you back, either by subscribing to this channel, watching the videos till the end, share this channel with your friends, or if you are making any purchases, it's absolutely worth it to take advantage of this channel sponsor, which is Eneba, as getting over time much more items for your money. It's always a great thing, and you can also support this channel by using the link which you're gonna find in the video description. So what exactly have I prepared for you? We have two different setups. First of all, indeed, I have to mention that when you are testing two different setups, indeed, you need at least 20 battery ports with one setup, 20 with the other setup, to find this average value because of the many factors which influence a battle outcome. But in this case, I just have only two examples because I would rather use this time to do more tests with the other heroes. So we're gonna take Sun Tzu with Philip and Theodora. And while Philip and Theodora have nothing on them, when we have a look at Sun Tzu, or to be more precise on his helm, I'm choosing 3 gems with health. That's a 3% health in total, as health is considered to be a defensive tool. Or yes, survivability, tankiness, and we're gonna compare the results versus the same setup, but this time we're actually gonna use a different gem. So let's go there. It's this battery port over here. We go to the comparison, we go directly to Sun Tzu, and when we have a look at the helm, yes, I'm using 3 attacks gems. Now you're gonna ask me, why aren't you using, for this example, match capacity? For a simple reason, because the match capacity is considered to be an offensive but also a defensive tool at the same time, and use exclusively an offensive tool, in this case is attack. And the opponent in both cases is a supply depot boss, and we are not just only gonna take the values from one match, we're actually gonna draw all the numbers out, as this video will gonna show you far more than just why the total damage value comes as close as possible to an overall match performance. So I'm taking the damage output from all 3 heroes versus all 4 matches, so we have 12 values in here. In a case in which I'm using 3 health gems, also important is the average battle duration, which in this case is 21 seconds. And on the right side, you are seeing the damage output of all 3 heroes versus all 4 matches. So again, 12 numbers added. And what else is important? The average battle duration, which is in this case 29 seconds. So let's lay out this differently. You see now on the left side of the screen, the setup using these 3 health gems. And that's noticeable here on the health stats. And on the other side, you see the setup using 3 attack gems, which is also noticeable right here. The strategy attack in this case, 505.6%. So it's clear to be seen. Now, what else have I added in here? Well, I told you there is another factor which comes as close as possible in helping us getting one number to describe the entire March performance, and that's the amount of troops which you were able to kill. And for the health setup, we have succeeded to kill 118,288 of them. And in a case of using the 3 attack gems, we succeeded to kill 187,196 units. So let's run the numbers. The total damage output of the setup with the health is 124,304 points. The total damage output when we are using 3 attack gems is 205,077 points. We have the battle duration here. For the health setup is 21 seconds. For the setup with the attack gems is 29 seconds. And sure, I have calculated the damage per second. So there are 3 numbers which could highlight the difference between these 2 setups. The numbers which I'm choosing right now is to compare the total damage output. And in this case, the setup with 3 attack gems is around 65% better. Now, if we want to judge the difference between these 2 setups based on the damage per second, well, the difference is 19.46%. And if we are using the amount of units which our opponent lost to highlight the difference between these 2 setups, we see that the setup with the 3 attack gems is 58.26% better. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, when you are testing these matches, you need at least 20 battle reports. Therefore, these numbers are not very accurate. And I'm expecting for these values to drop slightly, but they definitely will not drop to 20%, but rather to around 45% maybe. And comparing that with the damage per second, it's always going to remain super high, but also confusing. And there are cases when we are testing heroes with very high upfront damage or burst damage like Lubu, you're going to have battle reports in which you have cast a couple of attacks and your opponent has literally demolished you, and this will gonna result in some high damage output divided by a very short battle duration. And if you bother to calculate the damage per second value, you're gonna think, wow, my setup is absolutely crazy. But that could not be further than the truth, as it's far better to take these numbers, the total damage output which your match has achieved. Also, you can take these numbers, the amount of units your match succeeded to kill from the opponent match, as that's going to tell you 2 things. So either by looking at the stats, your opponent is far stronger than you, or if you are closer in stats than him, either he was super lucky or something is definitely wrong with your setup and you need to readjust it. And let's go one last time to the comment coming from Mr. Aspile14, saying basically, in other words, that the damage output and survivability and tankiness are 2 different things. But that also could not be further than the truth, as this example also highlights this. So I'm using on this setup 3 health gems, which definitely increase my tankiness, my survivability, yet the battle duration is 21 seconds. And when we look on the other side, I'm using, instead of 3 health gems, 3 attack gems, and the battle duration is suddenly 8 seconds longer. So if you ask me, that's increasing your survivability, that's increasing your tankiness, because that's also the extra thing which this video wanted to highlight. Because the defensive tools and the offensive tools are heavily interacting with each other. Or in other words, your defense tools like health, damage reduction, defense are indirectly increasing your damage or acting like offense tools, because you're gonna take lesser damage from your opponent. Therefore, on your turn, you're gonna hit harder. And the same thing goes for the offensive tools. They are indirectly acting like defense tools, because the harder you are able to hit, the more units your opponent will gonna lose. Therefore, his hits each turn will gonna be weaker and weaker. So beautiful people, if we want to recapitulate this entire episode, if you want to find a number to describe a March performance, there are two numbers which you can take. But you're definitely gonna need to have at least 20 attacks for each setup. Take that average number, which can be, yes, the amount of units your opponent has lost. And that number represents the average March performance, or you can take the total damage output and do the average of 20 attacks, and that number also comes extremely close in describing the entire March performance. But there is one number which you should never bother to calculate, as it's only going to confuse you, and that's the damage per second, beautiful people. So anyways, I hope you guys understood the explanation, but not just that, also understood how important it was for me to upload this video right now before we do far more testing, far more different hero setups, and join the discussion in the comments. And as always, beautiful people, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, don't forget to support what supports you back, and you should already know by now how to do that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm gonna catch you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao, ciao.